Are Callum and Iona based on real people?
Callum, Iona, all my characters that I write about are based on real people. Callum's based on a number of people that I know, probably a little bit of myself, lots of other people. And Iona is based on many children. I met very sort of vulnerable children who are often misunderstood. So she's based on quite a number of people. But there's one character who's based on a person who I remember, and that's Rob, the character of Rob. And he's based on a childhood friend of mine, a friend of my brother's. And when I was growing up, he was the most annoying person I ever knew. You've probably got people, there might be your brothers in there, but he was really, really annoying. And I wrote him exactly how I remembered him when I was younger. And I still know him now, and he's a great friend, but even as an adult, I find him really annoying. And what Berwyn, the actor who plays Rob, does, he plays it perfectly. I'm almost back in my childhood seeing him. So yes, I do base the characters on real people.
Next question.
Can you give us any wildlife topics that we could study in class?
Wildlife topics that you could study in class. Where do I start? I could be here for ages. I always think with wildlife, I'm fascinated by wildlife sort of in all countries, but I think one thing that's really important, is to look at the wildlife in your own area, to really sort of engage with it, because it's difficult to read about, lions in Africa. You don't get quite that engagement across the screen or across books, but actually if you go out into your own environment around Belfast, there's a great nature reserves, aren't there, all along the locks. And so I think that if you can go out into your own gardens, into that, and just sit and study, don't take your phones or don't take any things, go out into the woods and build dens, build trees, and just sort of absorb the wildlife and the wild places. And especially one of the things that I'm fascinated by, which I think one of the biggest habitats which is under threat, is actually the oceans. And that's often doesn't get enough news. So that's one of the things that I really like to champion, really, the protection of the oceans. But start off local. That's where I started, in my garden, looking at ants and worms and snails and all those kind of things.
On the goes.
Hi Gill Lewis, my name's Nicole Denham and I'm from Ashfield Girls. How do you feel about your book Skyhawk being made into a musical adventure?
How do I feel about it? It's been an amazing journey that my book has been made into this fantastic musical. When I was trying to become an author, becoming an author was very hard. It took me about 8 years to become published, and all that time, all I was dreaming of was seeing my book in print, being able to see my name on the book and get my story out there. And then once it was out there, I had a phone call from Tim Baker, the director who produced this. And when he said he wanted to make it into a stage play, into a musical, it was just the most incredible feeling. And when I was on the phone to him, I can remember exactly where I was when they had the conversation. And what he wanted to do, he had this vision that he wanted to take my book into schools, because when I was at primary school, we did lots and lots of, we wrote lots of stories in primary school, did lots of art, lots of pictures, we brought everything together. I remember we put on plays at primary school, and then the moment I went to secondary school, all of that went. Suddenly I didn't write any stories, the art was very restricted, and we didn't see any plays anymore, we didn't have the opportunity to do anything like that. And Tim had this wonderful vision. He said, actually what I want to do is I want to use your book to take into schools, to take between primary and secondary school, to get the arts celebrated, and that's what's happened, and it's been an amazing journey. And then with that, there are lots of people in the background who have all the sort of library services in Northern Ireland who have sort of championed the book to come into here. So it's just been, there's such enthusiasm, and it's just brilliant. It's just, I can't sort of say enough about it. It's been fantastic.
Next question.
You're vet and have included various animals in your books. Have you ever thought about writing any information books on animals?
Yes, I'm a vet, and I do have a real interest in wildlife, and I would like to write non-fiction. And I think the problem with non-fiction is it can become really dry. It can become a bit boring at times. Especially if you're not that interested. Something like history, I remember when I was growing up, there were just facts and dates and people, and it didn't engage with me until I started reading about history and about people in history and about their lives, and that's what brought it to life. And so I think I would like to write I suppose I would like to write information books, but perhaps have a narrative, a story thread to it, and especially for perhaps for younger years, perhaps for there's some great picture books for sort of 4, 5, 6-year-olds, and to bring a sort of story thread into telling a story about a particular animal or a particular habitat. I'd like to do that, but I haven't had time yet.
Go back to the boys.
What books did you read when you were younger?
What books did I read when I was younger? Well, when I was your age, I actually found reading and writing very difficult. I don't know whether any of you struggle with reading and writing. And when I was at school, we had this system where you had to read certain books before you were allowed onto what seemed the really interesting books. You had to go through A, B, C and D, and I couldn't get through those. And I remember at the time thinking it wasn't fair that all my friends are reading things like the Narnia and all these amazing books, which I just didn't have access to. So very unfortunately, I turned off reading when I was younger, and it's a huge, huge regret. And I sort of feel that I've been catching up now as an adult ever since rereading the books that I should have read in childhood. So I think, to those of you who might feel like I did, don't give up on books. Find books. Doesn't matter whether you start with graphic novels. I loved the Tintin books because they had pictures, because I could access stories through pictures. So don't give up on reading, because I really regret it. And as I say, I've been catching up ever since. So the the books that I read when I was younger, I was fascinated by animals. I was fascinated by all the different species, by the sort of habitats that lived. So I just had loads and loads of information books on animals. So I'd find out where they lived, what they ate, all the sort of facts. What's the fastest animal, the animal that can swim the deepest. So those were my books. But I really regret not reading more fiction books. So go out and read so much.
And our last question.
What do you think is the main message that a reader will take from the story?
The main message to take from Skyhawk, and it'd be interesting actually to hear the message that you've all received from Skyhawk. And I think there are two main messages that I would like the sort of story to share. And I think one is that we're all connected. It doesn't matter whether we're in a school or a bigger community, across countries. We're all connected, and that we need to have compassion and understanding for each other to make this a better world for everybody. And the other main message, which is obviously through the Osprey, is that we need to protect our wild world. We need to protect the nature, because unless we appreciate and understand nature, if we don't look after the nature, then we have no future. So that's the other thing that I really like to bring through. So as I said, I'd love to hear all your comments, what you feel you've got from that as well.